From a mysterious disappearance at sea to a fierce fight upon the Great Lakes, we come to the second USS Saratoga. Her predecessor had been short-lived and small, a classic Continental Navy ship in all regards. In turn, the second Saratoga was hardly a large ship in her own right, and largely overshadowed by the likes of Constitution in the War of 1812. However, for all that her own service would prove short in its own right, this Saratoga would have a single impressive battle to her name. That battle would etch her name in history for how stubborn and brave her crew were. Before that, a little backstory. In the War of 1812, while the adventures of high seas frigates take the big attention, the war on the Great Lakes was just as crucial. Arguably more so, as the Americans had a real chance to contest the Great Lakes instead of just pinpricking the Royal Navy. This, in addition to supporting the various campaigns in Canada and the logistic importance of the lakes, which all combined to make it a very important theater in the war. It was here you had such things as Oliver Hazard Perry making his name on Lake Erie, or the British eventually saying screw it and stripping down some third rates to build the one and only freshwater exclusive first rate they ever had. As far as Saratoga is concerned, she was constructed on Lake Champlain in 1814, well past when the lakes were really able to be contested, and when the United States was, in general, starting to falter in the war. Mostly because the British were done smacking Napoleon around, at least for the first time, and were routing forces to the Americas. Laid down on March 7, 1814, and launched on April 11th, Saratoga was entering service right as Napoleon was abdicating for the first time. This ship, a corvette of 26 guns, was the most powerful on the lake upon her completion. Equipped with 8 long 24-pounder guns and 18 carronades, 6 42-pounders and 12 32-pounders, she outgunned all the British ships available. It's telling that at just shy of 800 tons, it goes to show how small the ships really were. Even so, Saratoga would blockade the British fleet for a few months as they struggled to rapidly build a counter. The result of that effort would be HMS Confiance, a 36-gun frigate, albeit one built in a rush and with substandard materials. Even so, once complete, she outgunned the Americans in turn. Coupled with veteran troops from Spain being brought in to help, the British were able to push the Americans back in September of 1814. This ultimately saw the American forces bottled up around Plattsburgh Bay. Here would come Saratoga's one and only major action. The American commander, Thomas McDonough, flying his flag from Saratoga, set his ships across the mouth of the bay with support from shore defenses. This would force the British to lumber up against the wind, only able to use some of their guns. It was an excellent move to take advantage of his smaller fleet, further improved by training the crew to rapidly spin the ships around. Keep this in mind, for when the British launched their attack on September 11th, the first ship to be attacked was Saratoga. A British brig, HMS Linnet, fired on the corvette. Most of the shells fell well short, but one landed on her deck and smashed a cage holding a rooster. This rooster proceeded to land in Saratoga's rigging. This is where later USS Saratoga's emblems come from, for those who look at those things. While the rooster was doing rooster things, McDonough personally aimed one of Saratoga's 24-pounders at Confiance. That shot cut the British ship's anchor cable and smashed her helm. It would not by any means be the only hit Saratoga landed on her British counterpart, because when the battle began in earnest, Saratoga was at the heart of it all. She dueled directly with Confiance, the two flagships trading broadsides with each other. The first broadside from the frigate knocked half of Saratoga's crew off their feet, though they soon collected themselves and got back to the battle. Here a difference in experience took hold, as Confiance's more inexperienced crew fired mostly at Saratoga's rigging. Not that they meant to, but inexperienced men would do inexperienced men things. Saratoga, meanwhile, pounded Confiance's hull. She fired every gun on her starboard side as much as they could handle, even as the British eventually got their aim together and knocked Saratoga's guns out. Eventually, her last gun on the starboard side, a carronade, broke loose. Thus, 2 hours in, Saratoga was out of guns on one side of the ship. When that happened, McDonough put his plan into action. Saratoga dropped her stern anchor, cut her bow one, and spun around to bring her port guns into the fight. With her unengaged port side now able to batter Confiance, the British surrendered. This did not end the battle, though, as Saratoga's crew swung her around even further, firing upon Linnet this time. After a further hour of back-and-forth gunfire, The last British ship of any real size surrendered, with their gunboats retreating back to Canada. Saratoga, proud and strong, would take the captured prizes in, where they were stabilized and brought into American service. Not that any of them would see any further service. Saratoga herself would never sail in anger again. She would eventually be sold off in 1825, as the Great Lakes were demilitarized. Her service in active action only amounted to one battle, but that battle was one hell of a fight. It was arguably this action that established the name Saratoga in the United States Navy, actually. Not a bad legacy for a small little corvette. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll see you in the next one.